So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Robert Jenrick gets absolutely schooled for trying to pretend like his government are a new administration, a new government who have inherited all these kind of problems. And, top interviewer at the BBC, I think she is right now, Shelter the Crown, is Victoria Derbyshire, who, doesn't let him get away with it. She does a phenomenal job here. So let's have a listen.
Once and for all.
The backlog has happened on your watch. You've been in power for 13 years. It's costing $8 million a day, taxpayers' money. You're responsible.
Well, since I became immigration minister, we've made great progress.
Your party
you
has been in
asked for my own record on this.
No,
she's not asking for his own record. She's asking for the party's record, and she's going to do a good job here.
Didn't I said I asked about the Conservatives' record since 2010. The backlog was less than 20,000 in 2010.
So that would have been under New Labour. The backlog being about 10,000. Obviously, we've had a lot more crises since then. Obviously, the situation in Libya, in Syria, in Afghanistan. We've had kind of Tunisia as well. We've had a lot of natural disasters in around that time frame as well. So the backlog would naturally tick up. But the levels we have now are completely unsustainable because they have the Tories are refusing to process applications, and they've created this backlog to create the problems.
No, that
is true. It was less than 20,000 in 2010 and is now around 170,000.
In the final years of the last Labour government, there were over 400,000 what were then known as asylum records in the terminology they had at the time, and the system was out of control.
It was not out of control. What he's talking about, I have no idea. He might as well, cite the senator for Colorado and say that my sources, I made it the F up.
Has risen significantly over the last 13 years.
Cases that need to be processed, and I'm not here to defend that this year.
Why are you pretending that previous Conservative governments are nothing to do with you?
No, I'm not. I'm telling you what my own record is and that of Rishi Sunak. We came in to sort out this problem, and we're making good progress.
You see what I mean? He's trying to pretend that he's some sort of new. This is a new administration. This is brand new. When I came in, it was a mess, but I'm sorting it out. But then he was a minister. He was a minister under successive, under I think Theresa May, under Boris Johnson, under Liz Truss, right? And this idea that he's kind of trying to skirt collective responsibility, like it doesn't matter if you weren't a minister in that department, you have collective responsibility over what the government does. You are still a part of it.
And that's important to note.
Not according to the Home Affairs Select Committee this summer, who said the rise in the number of applications is down to the slow processing of applications. It's having a bigger impact on the backlog than the increase in applications themselves.
Well, I don't agree with the second half of that point. And so at the beginning...
What does he mean he doesn't agree with the second half of that point? It's the slow progress of applications. You guys are being inefficient, not dealing with people's applications. Instead of spending money on the Billy Barge or whatever that thing's called, you could have put that money to hiring civil servants and people who deal with applications in order to get these things through and decide if people should be able to seek asylum in this country. You're wasting people's money on Rwanda schemes and other pie-in-the-sky ideas.
Of the summer, we were processing 1,000 claims a week. We're now doing 3,000 and rising.
If we're going to trade...
Again, but it's inexcusable that it was that low in the first place. 1,000 in the summer a week. It's inexcusable it was that low.
There's huge work going on.
Let me trade them with you.
The fundamental question here is...
No, the fundamental question is...
If you process claims quickly, you'll stop people coming across in small boats.
That's nonsense. We've talked about this point before. The idea that if they process claims quickly, it will encourage more people to come here is absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. One of the reasons we're running into so many of these problems is because you're not processing applications. That's the fundamental point. If it was the case that when we processed applications quicker, there'd be less people trying to come here, then that would have happened, 7-8 years ago. We would have way more people trying to apply to come here. Honestly, just don't make sense. One of the main reasons that we are in this mess is because you didn't open safe points of entry, especially for Afghan refugees. Because I think they make up the largest single group. If we create safe points of entry and actual ways for them to apply for asylum, there wouldn't be so many channel crossings. Like, come on, Robert.
I don't think that's right.
Based on what?
Because I don't think that just having a system where you wave people into this country is an efficient way to manage.
Again, there's no such system where they wave people in this country. If people come here, well, regardless of how they get here and they claim asylum, you have to honour their claim. So this idea says, I think. It's not about opinion power, it's about facts. You don't have any. The facts are not on your side.
Your borders.
Sorry, so you just don't think that, or you've got some evidence that that is the case?
I do not believe... You're arguing, I think, that the sole...
I'm asking you for the
what he's trying to do is, he's trying to use his kind of saying, I believe. So when you attack what he's saying, you're attacking his kind of core beliefs. He's trying to kind of play a victim role, and then he's trying to say that what you're arguing is this. He's trying to frame the argument, but I don't think he's going to manage it.
Well, I think your argument is, and this is the Labour Party's position as well.
So that's an ad hominem attack, saying, oh, you know, what you're saying, and just like the Labour Party are saying. Again, Robert Jenrick is well out of his depth there.
The sole way to protect our borders is to have an incredibly efficient system that waves people in, processes
Again, that's a straw man argument.
Their claims quickly and enables them to get on with their life in the UK.
But then you wouldn't have people lounging around in hotels on benefits costing taxpayers £8 million a day.
Well, I don't think we should have people in hotels, and I expect us to be closing hotels very soon. But I do not believe we're, for example, massively increasing the fines on people who are working.
Let me ask a question.
Again, you know, other countries actually allow asylum seekers to work. So again, there's not an issue with that. One of the reasons the UK doesn't want to do that, because I think it allows them to be eligible for some sort of work visa if their asylum claim fails. I think that's what I heard a while ago. But you know what he's trying to argue is, it makes absolutely no sense, and he's strawmanning kind of her argument, saying, "Oh, what you're saying is to create the most efficient system, we should wave people in, process their claims, and let them get on with their life in Britain." Like, no, we should process people's claims, and if they are eligible to stay here, they should be allowed to stay here. That's how it's meant to work. That's how it worked before you lot, you know, came into power. Come on, bro. Sometimes judges do make exceptions for people whose asylum claims fail, but they allow them to stay in the country regardless because they might face political persecution. That's more rare to see that.
Because I feel like you may be talking out the time. It's true, isn't it, that you've no idea if the Rwanda scheme, if it gets up and running, would put people off coming. There is no evidence that it would have a deterrent effect.
Well, we have the evidence from Australia, UK. So deterrent...
You know, we have the evidence from Australia. People are still trying to get to Australia, pal. It's not working. And even then, the Australian system is different because they catch people as they're trying to come in and they send them off to their weird prison island thing. And evidently, if that weird prison island thing is still filling up with people, what that tells you is it's not working, is it?
Actually works.
Well, why
We've
did
seen
the
it
Home
here in
Secretary
Europe. We've
then?
seen it in Australia.
Why did your boss write in a letter to the Home Affairs Select Committee at the beginning of this year, as the policy has not yet been implemented due to litigation, it isn't possible to have a clear basis for evaluating its value for money, and I understand it's not possible for the government to accurately model the deterrent effect from day one. But we are confident this policy is our best chance at producing this deterrent effect.
Well, I completely agree with that. That sounds eminently sensible. Of course it's a novel.
Your Home Secretary is saying there's no evidence.
No, she's not saying that. She's saying this.
She literally did say that. It's impossible to model its effect. She's saying, I believe it'll work, but she's not sure. That is what she said, Robert.
Novel approach.
If the Supreme Court says the Rwanda plan is unlawful, and we'll find out next month, could your plan B be to leave the European Convention on Human Rights?
Well, that's not what we're talking about at the moment.
But could it be a plan B if the Supreme Court doesn't come down on your side?
So there's not enough time in this clip, but I think that's what they'll run their next manifesto promise on, leaving the ECHR. I think that's what they'll do next, because I've seen that from, I think it was Sunak, who said, like, we'll have to look at it next time out. But, you know, I think Victoria Derbyshire does a good job of trying to focus on the things that were published and the things that were said, because, again, you kind of have to be careful as a BBC journalist if you try and push your opinion to question Tory MPs, because we know one of the names of one of the guys who works in kind of in the news editorial offices, and he's very much a Tory. But Robert Jenrick trying to pretend they're a new administration. When I was put in, me and Rishi we were doing madness. We were doing absolute amazing work. And the mess we inherited, like, no, collective responsibility exists. He was the Chancellor. If they wanted to deal with the problems properly, the Home Office should have said to the Chancellor that we need more funds for more caseworkers to deal with the amount of asylum seekers that we are dealing with. Can you give us? Can you allocate more money to it? And that's how that conversation should have gone. Where do you think the money for the hotels and other things comes from? It comes from the Home Office budget, which is allocated to them by the Chancellor. So this whole thing of, this idea that they don't want people kind of in hotels and in other kind of places, which is costing the taxpayer money, but they also do not want to process application claims properly, means either they want to stick people in places like Napier Barracks and that stupid barge, should I say, and try and house everyone they can there, or they're just a bunch of political lunatics who have absolutely no idea what they're doing day to day. And I think it's a bit of column A and column B, but the problem is people will see that barge and people will still be annoyed about it. It doesn't really make much of a difference, but I guess they're hoping some seaside kind of towns see it rather than just most of the British public. But again, the answer is very simple. Instead of spending all of this money on hotels and all this money on other things, spend as much of it as you can on caseworkers, on people to deal with these asylum claims, on judges, and get them processed. Because the idea that the backlog is a deterrent doesn't make any sense, because there are still lots of people coming here. And what should have happened from the start is Europe should have come together to come up with a scheme to help deal with asylum seekers, whether that's helping people kind of claim asylum in various different European countries, or helping the countries that are nearby the crisis areas, that are near Syria, that are near Afghanistan, and helping those kind of countries out deal with the influx of refugees. That way you wouldn't have so many people kind of leaving neighbouring countries, because we've seen that Pakistan has taken a lot of refugees from Afghanistan on, but Pakistan is also an incredibly poor country that is facing huge crisis in flooding and other things. So it's just stupid. This whole kind of thing that we have in this whole conversation is just silly. And yes, Middle Eastern countries have to do a lot more, especially the richer ones. But can African countries do more? Not massively. You can't ask countries that are still developing and are still kind of impoverished to deal with an absolute massive refugee crisis from certain countries. When you look at the situation in Poland, which is doing very well as a developed nation, they are struggling massively with the influx of Ukrainian refugees. And I think Europe has come together far more to help out Ukraine than it has to help out some of the other kind of countries that are dealing with really bad dictators and militias and other things. So we wouldn't be in this mess if we dealt with things much better from the jump, but various politicians in this country and other countries failed, and the UK is still failing to understand the situation. And instead of dealing with it properly, processing people's claims, we have politicians who are desperate to point score and politicise over people that are incredibly vulnerable, and they want to imprison them on incredibly small rooms on a ship, on a barge. That doesn't make sense. To put them to a country that already has people fleeing from there to seek refuge into other countries doesn't make sense. They would rather spend money, instead of improving, the lives of some of the people in their country, they'd rather spend that money on sponsoring a football club. So anyways, I'm glad Victoria Derbyshire cooked this fraud. I think she could have done better, but again, I guess you are limited on how much opinion you can throw in. But, she asked him a question, he gave a stupid answer. She said, according to the Suella Braverman, according to these committees, according to these experts, you're wrong. And Robert Jenrick, probably sweating a lot more after the interview than he was before. So if I was any minister or junior minister, I would avoid certain news programmes to not look completely stupid. And if I were him, I'd avoid Victoria Derbyshire in the future. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.